Welcome to Speak Up, the television arm of Freemasonry throughout New Zealand. I am Barry Rushton, your host, and it is great to have you with us this evening. Many families leave New Zealand to live elsewhere, but others come to live in our beautiful country. The two guests we have this evening are immigrants from overseas, and we are richer for them being with us. Nick Haddad, with his family, arrived from the UK. He is no stranger to television, with BBC One featuring the family on an episode of Wanted Down Under. We will ask him all about that shortly. My second guest, Mark Pagulayan, is a young family man from the Philippines, bringing a rich culture which I find fabulously refreshing. And to round out the show is our regular contributor, Graham Houston, with the life and times of another famous Freemason. Nick.
Hello, Barry. Good to see you.
Very good to see you too, mate. Welcome to Speak Up, of course, and welcome to New Zealand. You would have heard that 100 times, right?
Thank you, man.
I mentioned in the opening that we know that you had this little television show that you were on yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit how that happened and what brought you to New Zealand.
I think the first thing that happened is my wife was coming off maternity leave with our third child, and I lost my job. So we looked at how we could do this in terms of childcare. So we both decided that I'd be a stay-at-home father or house husband. So, and I gave the breadwinner title to my wife. So if she was the main breadwinner, we didn't have to be focused in London. I was in IT. We could move around. So we looked outside of London, and we started looking further afield.
In England, though?
In England, or Singapore.
Yeah, yeah.
America came up, Canada, but we kept coming back to New Zealand. My wife had heard reports about, doctors in New Zealand that went windsurfing at lunchtime and what an idyllic lifestyle it was. And I chanced on a daytime program called Wanted Down Under, which families from the UK are taken out to Australia or New Zealand. They're shown houses, they're shown jobs, and they're given a taste of the Kiwi lifestyle.
That must obviously get quite a sizable audience because it must be a travelogue of New Zealand as well in Australia. Yeah,
I think it's normally about 2 million people
2 or 3 million
during the day. It's daytime telly, but a lot of people who are interested in coming to New Zealand or coming to Australia would watch it to find out about the lifestyle themselves.
Great.
I thought, that looks good. And I thought, if we can get on that programme, that'll save us a lot of money. So I wrote an application to the programme, and we got accepted upon it.
Wow.
So they sorted out the travel visas, they sorted out the flights, the rental car, and the holiday house. So
you came out first, right? You all came out first?
We all came out first. We flew via Singapore straight here.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got off the plane, there's a film crew there.
I saw that coming out there. It's wonderful.
Straight after going through customs and a 28-hour journey, get filmed. They drove us to the holiday house. And then filmed us for about another 6 hours.
Wow. You see, I have seen this little clip this program that you're on.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I saw when you came off through the international airport, and I'm thinking, these guys have been on a flight for so long, but you look terrific. And the holiday house, we have got a little clip which we will show a little bit later on that program. But so then you stayed, and then you decided to see, do you like New Zealand or not?
Well, it really was a taste of New Zealand for that week.
Yep.
So we had a day of rest after they'd filmed us for the first day. Then we were straight into looking at houses. So we saw how much we can afford for the money we had.
Right.
We saw some cracking houses, some really, really nice houses. It was too early for us to buy, but we got an idea of what we can afford with our money, what it would cost to live this lifestyle. The next day I went to look at a local school to see if the kids would like it and if they'd fit in and what sort of schooling they offered. And my wife also went to speak to a doctor at one of the local hospitals to find out how much money it would be and everything else.
So now that you've been a house husband, which is fantastic because you do a great job for what I've seen on the show, your wife has got a terrific job, hasn't she? She's got a terrific career, right? Yes. She's an anaesthetist, right?
She's a consultant anaesthetist.
Fantastic.
I mean, there was a time when we both earned on par, but my job was very London focused,
right? City
centre focused, financial area. Now, with her job, it meant that we could move out of London and indeed out of the UK, and her job is much more portable than mine. Now, the issue with that is her hours are a lot longer.
Yeah.
So this morning she left at 5:30. She'll be back tonight about 7. So
Wow.
in terms of getting the children ready for school, sandwiches ready, pick up, there's a school disco this evening, and all that entails, my wife's not around for it, so I'm the house husband to do that.
So you go back to England after the first initial trip. You make the decision, yes, you're going to immigrate, right? from UK?
No, I think, first thing, we saw all the lifestyle. There was nothing that we didn't like.
Right.
We saw the houses, we realised we could afford what we wanted, we liked the jobs, we liked the schools. It was still pretty good. What happened after the programme finished is we got a camper van and we drove around the North Island, New Zealand, and I remember exactly when the point was. I sat outside in a campsite in Coromandel with a glass of malt whiskey and looked at the stars.
Wow.
And I said to my wife, I think I'm a little bit in love with this country.
Would have been clear and beautiful.
It was and then when we came back, it was a little bit like a holiday romance. Where you miss, the person that you've met abroad, and you kind of thought, we want to kind of make this happen.
So when you decided to come, I mean,
Yes.
the immigration, were they helpful? Was it easy for you to do such? Was
was
there any
easy.
hoops
Sorry.
that you had to jump through that you didn't foresee, or that you thought, gee, I didn't expect that?
It was far more expensive than we thought.
Is that right?
It was a lot of money to get visas, to get the medicals, to get my wife's qualifications recognised. I'm not sure it's hoops. It's just it's a lot time consuming.
Right.
As a married couple, we were married 10 years before we moved here, but you still have to prove your marriage.
Well,
you have to provide photos of you as a
yeah.
couple. You have to provide travel itineraries to prove you're not a sham marriage.
Constant power bills with the same address and all
Yeah,
that sort of
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Now that the exuberance of actually getting here, now you've been here a little while now, correct?
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
2 years, that's fantastic. Has the gloss sort of waned a little bit? I mean, are you still as in love with the place as you thought you were always going to remain?
I am in no doubt this is the place we want to stay.
Beautiful.
I have moved my pensions over from the UK. We sold our house back in London. This is the place we want to live. The kids are sure about that. My wife and I are sure about that. We have a dog. We live the Kiwi lifestyle.
Beautiful. Now, you've been here long enough to know that you've met a number of New Zealanders. Yes. Are there any sort of antipathy and traits that you think, gee, these guys still haven't got over that? Do we do some quirky things that you've noticed?
I'm not sure there's quirky things. I think a lot of New Zealanders suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder. If it's rainy and grey and windy, which it often is, people are grumpy. People don't say good morning.
Yeah.
When the sun shines and the sky is blue, there isn't a better place in the world. It's warm but not too hot. It's just, there's a light breeze. It's beautiful. Beautiful. And people say good morning. People are friendly. People have just a little bit more time.
Great. Nick, before we talk about your life in the Freemason arena, the fact that you've now been so involved with the children, and you do all the bits and pieces, which I still love doing too, don't get me wrong, could you see yourself when they get to school or perhaps a little bit older, going back to that sort of corporate life that you were part of beforehand?
I'm not sure I could ever go back to the corporate life.
Yep.
Because I could start a new job and then say, sorry, it's 5 o'clock, I've got to go and pick the kids up. And they've got to do this. When they're older, maybe.
Now tell me, you joined Freemasonry in the UK before you got here, obviously.
Yes, 2009.
Tell us a little bit about how that evolved, what got you into it and why.
This is a very corporate city thing to do. I was out with a friend of mine at a cigar and mojito evening, as you do, before kids. And late in the evening, we started talking about religion. And I started pressing him what religion he was, how was he spiritual, this and the other. And he was a bit coy about it, and then said he was a Freemason. So I asked more questions about it. So I ended up going to meet his lodge for an away day weekend, what they call a ladies' night. So I met them in an informal setting. It wasn't a lodge meeting, but it was informal, it was black tie, it was a dinner dance. It was very nice to meet them all casually. I then decided I'd like to join, so I was initiated in January 2009.
Okay. And so you went through the 3 steps basically before you arrived here in New Zealand?
Yes.
Right, so that was all done.
Yes.
But you never took office, you never actually
I was what they call senior warden.
Okay, oh, that's close.
Just before I left, I would have been installed in the chair.
If you'd stayed.
Yeah, I left in the May, well, I resigned in the May. I'd have been installed in the chair in October.
Yeah, okay, good. So you've joined a lodge here, and a great lodge too, I know, because I'm a member of it as well. But tell me, have you noticed, obviously lots of similarities within the actual ritual and how the lodges do things, but are there some sort of differences that you see about the way New Zealanders might approach being in lodge compared to your experience in the UK?
I think the main difference here is that the lodge meets once a month, and you have practice, so two times before that. So 3 evenings a month you're taken up with Masonic stuff, if you're a member of just one lodge. So it's a lot more intense, but also a lot more enjoyable. The first meeting of the lodge that I went to, I brought my UK book, and I tried to follow it, and I gave up because it's slightly different. It's the same, but it's slightly more elaborate here.
Okay.
The room here is much better appointed with microphones, with lights, with a sound system, with an organist. In the UK, we met in a makeshift room in a hotel, and it's not quite the same.
No, quite so.
And I think here, you really feel that you are this band of brothers. You know, I think we're all very close. We've got to know each other in the, crikey, only 8 months I've been part of this lodge. And I think I said we know each other. We're friends. We have a good time together. We perform our ritual very well, and it's also, you know, we can speak to each other outside of lodge, and it really does feel a close-knit band of people.
Great. Nick, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great having you here, and fantastic for you coming to New Zealand. You're going to love every moment. I know your family does. I've seen them enjoying themselves, and maybe you can entice some of your other family members out here as well. Good on you, mate. Thanks again.
Thank you.
My second guest this evening is a young man from the Philippines. Mark Pagulayan. I know I'm having a tough time with that. How would you like to say it more correctly than myself?
Barry, it is pronounced as Pagulayan.
It's not that difficult, is it? I just need to work a little harder.
Yes.
It is great to have you here. It's great. What age did you immigrate to New Zealand? When did you come to New Zealand?
I came to New Zealand in 2006, and I was 25 at that time.
Wow. Okay. Did you come by yourself?
My parents came here initially.
Right.
And when my father told me that he was migrating to New Zealand to look for a better future, my first reaction was, where's New Zealand?
A lot of people have had that thought for sure.
Yeah, but now, and then afterwards, I came and followed, and then my two younger sisters came and followed as well. And right now, we're all settled here in New Zealand.
Wonderful. Now, you may not know this, of course, but why did Mum and Dad decide to pick New Zealand? Why not, say, Australia or Canada or something like that? Did they have other relations out here?
No, they didn't have any relations out here, but a few friends who suggested and recommended New Zealand to them. And that was the first country that came out, so it was, okay, let's go.
Let's go. Every photo, I've never been to the Philippines, and I will remedy that at some stage, but all the photos I have seen of the Philippines, it's just so beautiful. It's just, maybe we're just seeing the lovely photos. What made your parents and yourself decide, okay, I'm going to leave this little paradise group of islands to come to another little group of paradise islands?
Well, firstly, I would say that Philippines is really a beautiful country, not only in photos, so I suggest that you should make time and visit the Philippines. I guess it's really for a better future, greener pasture. Must be the reasons why my parents decided to move here.
You, or your parents and yourself, lived in Manila, correct?
Yes, we did.
What I believe, Philippines has a population of about 102 million, and I think Manila has one of something about 23, 24 million.
That's correct.
Was that a factor? And you're saying, well, let's go to a little island that's got 4.5 million people.
Yes, I believe so. Looking back, traveling to and from work because of traffic, just the volume of vehicles, just it was consuming a lot of our time in our daily lives, really.
Well, mate, you're living in Auckland now, and I think you're actually striking the same thing.
A little bit less, I suppose. Yes.
Tell me, before you left when you were 25, you said.
Yes.
What was your occupation? What were you doing? What kind of life did you have before you left? And I know you had a family life, but what was the life like in a place like that?
At that time, 25, I was working as a software engineer for a Japanese firm.
Right.
As a 25-year-old, you have a lot of night outs with friends and a lot of gatherings really with people, a lot of socializing.
Right. Okay, are you doing something similar in New Zealand now?
Close to that, Barry.
Yeah. Tell me what the difference. What are you doing?
At the moment, I'm a senior network engineer for the University of Auckland.
A network engineer.
Yes.
Okay. What does that entail? What's that mean?
It means we look after the whole network for the university. It's 40,000 or more clients or devices connected to it, and we make sure that we provide a reliable and a safe network connection for the students and staff.
I'm sure you're at liberty to say this is the University of Auckland, correct?
Yes.
40,000, you call them clients, which is obviously
Devices.
screen devices,
Yes.
hooked up. That's incredible.
Yes.
Wow. Now, that must be one of the largest in the country, is it?
I believe we are the third largest in the country in terms of networking, and it's really a massive responsibility for us network engineers to look after a huge university.
Mark, I mean, I'm pretty computer illiterate. I've got one computer in the office and at home, and I'm always a bit scared that if something goes wrong, you know. What happens when, in that sort of a system, when something goes wrong?
You go and run and panic and put your headsets on, so that you can concentrate and fix the fault.
Does your system then come under attack often from wherever?
Yes, both internally and externally. But we have placed security all around the university to counteract those attacks.
Wow. So what I'm taking from that, of course, is there are hackers out there, obviously, who just want to cause mischief, but there may even be hackers within the system, someone like me who might want to go in and try and up my grade a little bit, right? Move it from a C to an A or something like that.
That's one thing. But there's a lot of things like, there are more serious, like intellectual properties that researchers are doing within the University of Auckland that the hackers wants to steal for their own gain, or maybe politically, or for their own country.
You know, talking about protection, I mean, every now and then I'll get a little screen pop up on my computer saying your protection is running out or you haven't got it or whatever. So obviously you just don't go down to a computer store and buy this kind of protection. You must have this constantly being updated, rolled over constantly, right?
That's right, Barry. These are enterprise-grade endpoint protections that we install on top of the network layer protection that we provide for the whole university.
A complex job.
It is indeed.
Oh, good. And you're enjoying it?
I am. I've been there for 10 years now.
So Mark, you've been a Freemason now for a period of time, and not only that, you've actually risen to the actual top of your lodge as Worshipful Master. How did your pathway start? I know you weren't a Freemason in the Philippines. You've joined since you've been here. So how did your pathway start in Freemasonry?
So knowing that that our national heroes are Freemasons is what inspired me initially to look at joining Freemasonry. And second is curiosity. And when I met a friend who was a Freemason here in New Zealand, it was through him that I was able to join a lodge.
So you rose to, when I say rose to the rank, that sounds a bit silly, but you worked your way through the various parts of a Freemasons meeting and you became a Master of the Lodge. What year was that?
2017, 2018.
Oh, so you're just out of the chair?
Yes.
So you can look back now, okay, either with great fondness or great relief, one of the two. What's some of the things that you really loved about being a Master of the Lodge?
Being a Master has great challenges unto it. And there are a few things that it taught me. And a few things of those are, it taught me how to accept the different people and situations that may arise. At the same time, optimistically treat all these challenges as something that I can learn from.
Right.
And most importantly, it helped me to understand myself, that what I can and cannot do.
Fantastic. Well, mate, you've been carrying the torch for the Philippines in your lodge and here. Thank you for being a guest, and I really, really enjoy all the men that I've met from the Philippines and their families. It's been a lovely experience for me. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of everybody. Thank you. And rounding out the show this evening is our regular contributor, Graham. Great to see you.
Hello,
I
Barry.
believe you've been in Perth. Good to have you back, mate. Who have you got for us today?
A guy called Mustafa Kemal Ataturk.
Wow, heard that name.
He is very, very famous, famous throughout the world. He was a revolutionary statesman and founder of the Turkish Republic. Born in 1881, died in 1938. He was more of a secularist and a nationalist person, and that was reflected in his policies, which became known as Kemalism or Ataturkism or the Six Arrows, and they covered the programs that he had. He is a bit of an enigma in some respects. There is the conspiracy theorists out there will say that he was a Jew. Others will say that he was a Islamist. But he seemed to come, or his family seemed to come from from the area where a lot of Jews outwardly became and converted to Islam, but practiced the Jewish faith privately. So no, he was a bit of an enigma. They weren't quite sure which one he was. But he went to school in his very early years at a Islamist school, but at his father's urging, that was changed to go to a secularist school. And so when his education was finished, he went into the military.
I think that's where he really is known, right through that his whole military life.
And it seemed to be that he was always involved in wars. And during that time, he rose till he had command of the army. And it was in that position that he finally took over and ran the Turkish Republic.
Exactly. And I think for our viewers out there, that we all know the Gallipoli, events in the First World War. Well, he was the commander of the Turkish side, right?
Correct. And it's probably more significant today, given that this year is the centenary of the signing of the armistice for the First World War.
Quite so.
And so he was very, very involved in that campaign. And one of the interesting things, part of the planning, he predicted whereabouts it was that the British or the Anzacs would land in Gallipoli, and that gave them a little bit of the upper hand right from the word go. Right. And so that campaign is where he gained his name and where we in New Zealand and in Australia came to hear about this guy called Ataturk.
So at the end of the First World War, at the end of the First World War, when the Allies basically had won, they then decided how the boundaries of countries were going to go, correct? But he said, well, I'm not going to have a part of that.
Well, he was unhappy with the treaty conditions, because it was the breakup of the Ottoman Empire at that stage, and he was unhappy with the terms, and he and a group of others fought against it, and that's where the establishment of the Republic came about. Interesting man in the sense that he had a lot of good family traits about him. He and his wife adopted 13 children, 12 were girls and 1 were boys, so he had a very strong family connection there. And that a lot of his social policies reflected that. Like Sharia law was abolished in 1924. In 1925, he introduced the hat law. Now, the hat law was an interesting law. The Turkish or the Ottoman Empire, the headdress that men did wear was the fez, that cylindrical hat with a little tassel on the top that they wore.
I've always seen a Turkish dancer with that hat on, right?
The 1925 hat law took that away as being the headdress of Turkey, and the Western hat, like the fedora or the hats, were the hats to be used, because he wanted to westernise and make it a westernised democracy and a secular democracy within Turkey. And so Western style suits and neckties for men, and women could wear what they were comfortable in and what they thought was appropriate for them at the time. Now, that did cause some concern amongst the more conservative people, and there were attempts to move him aside. There was even an assassination attempt, but that was thwarted as well. So he brought about this very big change within the Republic of Turkey. And he did say, and one of his mottos or one of his slogans was, peace at home, peace in the world. So he was just trying to establish peace at home, then that would reign throughout the world. Not just if there was peace there, but peace everywhere.
Did you find out then, of course, where he joined Freemasonry?
Yes, he became a Freemason in 1907. He was initiated under the Grand Orient Lodge of France.
Wow.
Now, one of the interesting facts was that 80% of his officers during the time of the Turkish War of Independence were Freemasons.
Wow. 80%.
it is said that he always surrounded himself with Freemasons. So they had a lot of influence in Turkey at that time. In 1935, under pressure from Hitler, Mussolini, the people that were not pro-Freemasonry, but they were not pro a lot of foreign societies or groups.
Anyway,
and neither was he, Ataturk, pro. And so the order to shut these organisations down came, and many of them were compelled to shut down. But Freemasonry was not compelled to. It was just suggested to them that they
lay low
and cease operations, which they did. And so in 1948, it was a relatively easy job for them to re-establish in what they did, and they got their properties back.
So they weren't persecuted. He just let them sort of
let them die,
sit under the blanket, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so there are memorials all around the world attributed to Ataturk. And United Nations in 1981 named it the Ataturk Year of the World. There are Ataturk Airport, there's Ataturk Bridges, there's Ataturk Channel in Australia, there's the Ataturk Memorial in New Zealand, in Wellington. There are many, many places that have paid tribute to this man.
Even though he was an enemy, he was an honourable person.
He was an honourable person. And look, in reading history, I often think, it's the people that go out the front often don't really want to be there. It's the people in the governments and in the powers that make those decisions who are never at the front and never have to face what these guys face. Today in Turkey there are about 211 lodges involving about 14,900 members, and they're very much involved in promoting Freemasonry within Turkey and in Russia and in Syria and places like that as well. So it's a vibrant and well-established organisation in Turkey today.
Fantastic. Graham, thank you, mate. Obviously, you always pick the great people to talk about, and today was no exception. Thank you again.
Thank you, Barry.
Well, that's our show for this evening. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about Freemasons, please just go to the Freemasons website, which is freemasonsnz.org, or call the telephone number at the bottom of the screen. Look forward to seeing you next week.